All right, everyone. Welcome. It's great to see you all. Welcome to our second session of Tales to Inspire. Okay. Hey, Matt. Good to see you. All right, so let's jump right in. Like I explained yesterday, so this week with the holiday, with the intermediary days of the holiday known as Chol Hamoed, so the idea was let's do some stories, some inspiring Pesach stories, Passover stories that might have some nice lessons for us to learn, good stories to hear. It's always good to hear a good story. So that's the goal. All right, I want to start with a story that is told about the Berditchever, which refers to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev. He was a Hasidic master. He was a Kabbalist, a Hasidic master, a scholar, a very pious rabbi, and he lived about 200, 250 years ago in the old country, in Berditchev. And he's known as the great advocate for the Jewish people because no matter what happened, he was always looking positively at someone else. Like for example, when he met a Jew on Yom Kippur eating a sandwich, so he goes over to him and he says, you probably forgot that today is Yom Kippur." And the young man says, "No, I know today's Yom Kippur." Then he says to him, "Well, you probably forgot that you're not supposed to eat on Yom Kippur." And the fellow says, "No, I know you're not supposed to eat on Yom Kippur." And he tries some other forms of finding some justification or excuse. And after all of his attempts are thwarted by this man saying, "No, I actually know exactly what I'm doing, eating on Yom Kippur, etc., in full violation of the law," but the Rabbi Levi Berditchev looks up to heaven and he says, "Dear God, Hashem, look at how beautiful your children are. Look how beautiful your people are. How they don't tell a lie. How they always tell the truth." So that was his way of finding something positive, even in that sort of situation. And there are many stories told of of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev finding some positive qualities in someone else. But here's a story about the great Seder. So the story is told that Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev had a wonderful Seder experience together with his students and his family, and it was really an uplifting Seder experience with insights and songs and joy and energy and just an incredibly powerful Seder. And after the Seder concludes, he was a spiritual man. After the Seder concludes, he hears a voice from heaven say, "The Seder of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev was pretty amazing, but the Seder of Shmerel the tailor was even more incredible." That's what it was. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak's Seder was great, but Shmerel the tailor's even greater. So now he's thinking, who's the tzaddik Shmerel the tailor? So he asks his students, because his students didn't hear this voice from on high. He asked them, "Do you know of a tzaddik, of a righteous person named Shmerel the tailor who lives in town?" And they're all looking at each other, and no, they don't know any righteous person named Shmerel the tailor. So after a minute or two of thinking, one of the students says, "Well, wait a second, hold on. There is a Shmerel who used to be a tailor 30 years ago, but he's not a tailor anymore. In fact, he doesn't work at all. He is a shikr." You know what a shikr is? Shikr? Unmute yourself if you know what a shikr is.
A drunk.
A drunk. He's a shikr. He's the town drunk. That's what he is. He's not. He doesn't. He doesn't. He's not a tailor. He's a shikr. He's certainly not a tzaddik. This guy, doesn't do much by the way of Judaism or spirituality.
Is that Yiddish? The Yiddish word? Shikr?
Is shikr Yiddish? It
So.
comes from the Hebrew, which is l'shaker, which means to drink, not like with a kuf, shaker, which means falsehood, but l'shaker with a chaf or a kaf means to drink. So Is it Yiddish, or maybe it's a Yiddishized version of the Hebrew? But either way, it's a shikr is a drunk. So, or a shikr could either be a noun or or a um, or a verb. Like you might tell someone like, "Let's get shikr," right? No, oh no, that's not a verb. That's an adjective. Whatever. Not that you should say that, but whatever. But that's used in a sentence. So the Berditchever says, so let's go see what this guy's Seder was all about. This Shmerel the tailor slash Shmerel the shikr. Very hard to say, by the way. Okay, so they somehow discover this guy's address. He lives at the edge of town in this hovel, in this small hut. He hasn't made a living in 30 years, and he drinks away all the money that his wife is able to earn, whatever it is. So they live in very, very, very meager conditions. And this is after a long Seder, so it's the middle of the night. So he knocks loudly. The Berditchever, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev, with his students, knock on this man's hut. And his wife answers, and she says, Rebbe, how can I help you? So he says, I'm looking for your husband. I want to ask him a question. My husband? Ay, Gewalt. Shmerel, she calls him. He's not getting up. He's a bit intoxicated. So she takes a bucket of water and pours it on his head, and he wakes up. He comes to the door. He's dripping wet. He says, Ay, Rebbe, sorry. Everyone knew, of course, the Berditchever Rebbe. And so eventually he puts on some new clothes, a dry shirt, and he faces the Rebbe. And the Rebbe looks at him and says, Tell me about your Seder. And the man says, Oh, Rebbe, I'm so sorry. I apologize. It's not my fault. I didn't know. I was unprepared. He says, No. Just tell me what happened. Because remember, he heard from on high about how special this man's Seder was. So he says, okay, here's the story. Yesterday, not yesterday, whatever, the morning before the Seder, right? This is Seder night after the Seder. So in the morning, I was weaving through town, as I usually do. And I see everybody's busy. Everyone's super busy with their, running with this, with that, buying and schlepping and moving. And I asked somebody, what's going on? Why all the hustle and bustle? He says, Shmerel, what are you, drunk? You don't realize what's going on? It's Erev Pesach. Passover's tonight, the Seder. He's like, oh, Passover, Pesach. It kind of triggers a memory, but I can't really remember in this fog that I'm in this haze that I'm in. So he says, tell me about the holiday. He's like, Shmerel, how do you not know this? So he says, okay, so there was an Exodus, Egypt, the Jews, Moses, plagues, God, freedom. We celebrated matzah, wine. Oh, you'll probably like the wine, he tells him. But Mar, whatever, you got to do a Seder. That's how we do it. That's how Jews do it for thousands of years. So he says, how should I do this? He says, well, look, your biggest challenge with this is not being able to drink vodka for 8 days. He's like, if you were in Israel, it would only be 7 days. But here in Russia, Ukraine, wherever they were, it's going to be 8 days. 8 days of no vodka. He says, 8 days of no vodka. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Anyway, so that conversation ends, and quickly, Shmerel somehow procures a bottle of vodka. And he says to himself, look, this is the last vodka I can drink in 8 days. So he gets a big bottle. He pours himself 8 large cups of vodka, one for each of the days that he won't be able to drink vodka because of, vodka is made of grain, which is chametz. That's why we don't drink it on Passover. And so he gulps down 8 cups in preparation for Pesach. This is his Erev Pesach prep. And he ends up stumbling home, or maybe he did it at home, and he's in bed. He did that early in the morning, and now he's out the whole day. Come Seder night, his wife says, Shmerel, wake up, it's Pesach, the Seder, we got to do it. And he's like, wow, he's in this stupor from all that vodka. And again, so he's telling the Berditchever, she poured a bucket of water over my head. You saw her do that, right? When you came to the door, she did the same thing. That's her go-to move. So she poured the bucket of water on my head, and I got up and I walked into our dining room, and I see the table is set so beautifully. A white tablecloth, candles, matzah, maror, all of the wonderful Seder plate items are all set, and the wine and everything. I sit down, I'm still in a haze, and I look at all this stuff, and I looked at it, and I looked at my wife, and I said, with choking up, I don't really know what to do. I don't really know how to do this. I don't know how to read this book, the Haggadah. I don't know how to read the Hebrew or what it means. I don't know the order of things that I should do. I don't know how to eat, what to eat, when to eat, what to say when I eat. So he takes a large bowl. He puts everything. He says, well, he's telling us in the first person. He says, I saw this. I didn't know what to do. I took a large bowl. I put everything in the bowl. I put the 3 matzahs. I put the maror. I put the vegetable. I put the charoses. I put the wine. Everything in a bowl. And I took a big spoon and I mixed everything up. We call this cholent. No, but I'm kidding. He put everything. He says, I put everything into a bowl. And then I spoke to God. And I said to God, I said, look, I don't know much. I don't know how to read the book. I don't know when to eat and how to eat and what to eat. But this is what I know. This is what I know. I know that from a young age, my father passed away. And after my father passed away, I didn't have the opportunity to study in a Jewish school because I had to help support my family, so I went immediately to work. And I know that I've done things in my life that have taken me away from my Jewish knowledge and my connection to the community. But here's what I do know. What I do know is that many years ago, you took us out of Egypt. And I know with full faith, and I believe with full faith and trust in you, that you will soon bring Mashiach and take us out of this exile. And with that, he took the bowl and he gulped the whole thing down. And he said to the Berditchev, that was, the Berditchever, he says, that was my Seder. And that's usually how the story ends. That's usually how the story ends, and that was the special Seder in Berditchev. And the voice had rung out earlier saying to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, you think your Seder was special? That one was special. Why? You and I can come up with the theories. I think it has something to do with sincerity. It has something to do with just pure heart. Sometimes we think that God loves sophistication. I think we like sophistication. God likes the simple things. God likes a person who honestly and genuinely communicates with him and who is honestly and genuinely open to a relationship. So that raw, vulnerable, honest conversation with God, not knowing the meaning, not knowing the whole story, not knowing the prayers, not knowing the words, just honestly speaking to God and saying, here's what I know, you took us out, you will take us out again, I believe it 100%, l'chaim, and then drink. That to God was very special. And I think there's a lot to be that we can learn from that. There's another story along those lines. I'm going to get the details in a moment. I'll remind myself the details. There was a
I have a cute anecdote.
Yeah. Anecdote away while I'm looking something up. Yeah.
So, remember I told you about Fiddler on the Roof?
Yes.
So there's a movie called Sideways, which is, I don't know, 10, 15 years old, about the California wine tasting region.
Okay.
The central character was going through a tough time, and he was a wine expert, connoisseur, and one day he's in the wine tasting room, and they have a bucket where people like spit in their leftover tastes.
Oy.
He took that bucket and threw it over his head.
Gewalt.
So that reminded me of you saying
He just drank the whole bowl. Yeah. Interesting. All right, here's another story. This story is with a fellow named Reb Shmuel. Reb Shmuel was a very impoverished individual. He was very, very poor. His family didn't have money, and he had a wife, he had children, and he was always struggling to support his family. But he had made a decision years ago, he had made a decision that he wasn't going to ask for help, that he would trust in God, and whatever God provided he would have, and he would trust in God, and he wouldn't burden other people with his needs. That was his way. I'm not going to analyze right now, if is that appropriate? That's for another conversation. But this was his way. And so it was before Pesach one year, before Passover, and he was in a particularly difficult time. He didn't have any money at all. Usually it was always a struggle, but this time he didn't have any money to buy matzah, to buy wine, to buy certainly not any food for the holiday. And he was really in a bind, really stuck, not sure what to do. Well, in the meantime, miles away, there was the famed Rebbe, the famed Hasidic rabbi, who was known as the Chozeh of Lublin. Chozeh means the seer. Seer like S-E-E-R, like the one who can see, someone who has vision. The Chozeh of Lublin was a very, very, very special tzaddik who had the ability to see things and to know things and to give blessings. Many, many stories about it. So the Chozeh of Lublin, far away, or not that far away, but miles away, was very much aware of Reb Shmuel's plight and the fact that he didn't have any money for the provisions of Pesach and the Seder that was going to happen that night. This was Erev Pesach, the morning before the Seder. And the Chozeh of Lublin says to one of his students, he says, who was wealthy, who had money, he says, go home and pack up a full wagon filled with holiday supplies, delicacies, materials, from the matzah to the wine, to the meat, to the fish, to clothing for the family, for the children. Pack up a wagon load full of supplies, materials, foodstuffs, etc. for the whole holiday, and send it to Reb Shmuel. He needs it. And so this chassid, the chassid of the Chozeh of Lublin, goes home. He gets involved in some stuff. He gets distracted a little bit with his own preparation with his family, getting ready for the holiday. After a few hours, he puts everything together. And now it's just a few hours before the holiday, and finally, the wagon sets off to the house of Reb Shmuel. Well, Reb Shmuel, not if you don't have any provisions at home, so what else are you going to do? So he is in the study hall. He's in the synagogue studying, getting ready for the holiday in a spiritual way. And suddenly, this is an hour or two before the holiday, suddenly his son, one of his sons, runs into the study hall and says, Tati, Dad, Abba, Father, says, Tati, there's a wagon load filled with provisions in front of our home. And they want to unload all this stuff for the holiday. They say it's for us. Should we accept the delivery? So the man runs home, and he sees it, and he is overjoyed. He is completely blown away. He is overjoyed. And he says, of course, we'll accept it. They unload it, and they have what to have now. They have what they need for the holiday, for the Seder. That night, this man, Reb Shmuel, was so on cloud nine, you couldn't imagine. He was on top of the world. He was so happy. He was so excited. He was so grateful to Hashem for providing him this blessing. He was so grateful for the individual. I don't know if he knew who had sent it, but whoever it was, he was so grateful for the one who had sent it. His spirit was just ecstatic. And he spent the whole night Sedering. He spent the whole night involved in the insights of the Seder and the songs, telling the story, answering questions, engaging his family, eating the matzah, drinking the wine, a lavish meal, enjoying all the food, physically, spiritually, psychologically, emotionally, on every single level. He was just completely, on cloud nine. And his Seder finished early in the morning. I mean, he had the Afikomen, of course, before midnight. You're supposed to have the Afikomen before midnight. but he finished the Seder close to morning. Well, it was already almost daybreak. He runs to the mikveh, to the ritual bath, and he continues on his way to the morning prayers. Then he comes home and has a bit of a meal after the prayers. And with that, he finally goes and lies down, goes to sleep. He hadn't slept in a long time. Remember, he stayed up the whole Seder, the whole night of the Seder, and now finally, he he lies down to sleep. It's the day of Pesach, and he's lying down to sleep, and he sleeps such a deep slumber. He tells his family, "Wake me up in a few hours," but they know how exhausted he is, and they let him sleep. Finally, he wakes up with a start. This is the second night of Pesach. He wakes up with a start, and he looks at the clock, and he sees what time it is, and he runs out, and he says, "Oy Gewalt, it's already late at night. It's almost midnight. I have to eat the afikomen. I have to eat the matzah. I have to finish the whole Seder and eat the afikomen before midnight." And it wasn't much time, maybe a half an hour. He slept the whole day. And so he quickly, gets all the supplies, gets all the wine, the matzah, everything together, and he runs through the Seder. No singing, no kavanas, no like deep intentions, just running through it, mumbling the words, knocking it out, getting through the various steps until he finally eats the afikomen, and he's done it. He got it in on time. When he went later on after the holiday to the Choz of Lublin to express his gratitude, because he knew that ultimately it was instructed by the Choz of Lublin, by the Rebbe. So the Rebbe told him that I was able to see that you had your first Seder was okay, but your second Seder was very powerful. He says, "What? The first Seder, I think you have it backwards. The first Seder, we were engaged, we were discussing, it took hours and hours of discourse and singing, and we were fully present and all that stuff. The second one, I knocked out in half an hour. I was heartbroken. I was devastated." So the Rebbe tells him, sometimes God doesn't want, again, it's a similar theme, God doesn't want our sophistication. God wants our sincerity. It's not, sometimes when we do something because we're excited about it, we get in the way of the pure experience. It becomes about us. It becomes about, I wanted to do it, or I was excited about doing it, and then the question might be, so who was it for? Was it for God, or was it for us? He says, but the second Seder, in which it was all about the mitzvah, all about getting it done, no feeling, no intention, no nothing, just, I got to get it done, it's a mitzvah, I have to do the mitzvah, that was pure. That was pure. And that's also a lesson in life when it comes to a mitzvah. There are mitzvahs that we enjoy and mitzvahs that we might not enjoy. So which is better? First of all, we shouldn't be ranking mitzvahs. But on the one hand, the one that we enjoy, we're doing it with our full engagement, our full heart, our full excitement, enthusiasm, we're fully present. That's the advantage of the mitzvahs that we enjoy. But there's an advantage when we do the mitzvahs that we don't necessarily enjoy, and that is that when we do it, it's completely for God. It's not for us. It's not for our own, mind or our own heart, our own excitement, our own, way from that is the mitzvahs. We're meant to understand them, but we're also meant to do them even when we don't understand them. And that is a tremendous benefit. Okay, I want to end off with one more story, one final story. And this is an incredible story, and I'm only going to reveal the name of the main character at the end of the story. You heard it here first. There was a very wise, very pious rabbi whose name was Rabbi Herschel Chartkover. He came from the town of Chartkov in Galicia, in Poland. Chartkov was the town. He was known as Reb Herschel Chartkover. Reb Herschel from Chartkov. Anyway, he was known as being a person who is dedicated to helping those in need. He spent all of his days either in study or collecting funds to distribute to those in need in the community. He would always be collecting tzedakah in order to give it out to families and individuals that needed on whatever level of need. And, he was a rabbi in the community, the rabbi of the community, and very prominent, very, very well beloved and well respected. And there came a point in time where his responsibilities were so great and so numerous that he simply wasn't able to do everything by himself. He needed to hire an assistant. He needed to hire a shamash. So he hires this man whose name was Anshel Moshe. Anshel Moshe, a good man, young man, not married. He hires him to be his personal assistant, to handle just stuff, office stuff, not an office, whatever, the stuff day to day. And he's his right-hand man, and he is trustworthy, and he is just a pleasure to work with. Well, after a little while, Anshel Moshe gets engaged, and he's set to get married. And it's decided that he is going to move after he gets married to the town that his wife is from, which is not that town of Chartkov. It's a different town. And so he tells the rabbi, Reb Herschel, he tells him, look, after I get married, I'm going to be moving away. My father-in-law is going to give me a shop, some work to do, and whatever. My wife is from there. I'm going to move over there. And so it's with sadness that Reb Herschel says goodbye to Anshel Moshe as his assistant, wishing him mazel tov, good luck and success, but he sends him on his way. Well, shortly thereafter was the holiday of Pesach. Pesach comes along, and what do you do before Pesach? You search the whole house for chametz. So Reb Herschel, the rabbi, searches his entire home, including his office, his study. And when you search for chametz, you're not only looking for boxes of Cheerios, you're looking every corner, every crack, every crevice, every drawer you open up to see, what might be inside. And so he's looking. He's opening up all of the drawers in his office, in his desk, and he sees one of the drawers, in the back of the drawer, he notices there's something missing. What's missing? He has a purse that has the money that he collects, special money that he collects, large amount of money that he uses for very special occasions and for very special needs, and for those in need. And he notices, as he's checking for the chametz, that purse and that money vanished. He's looking in all of the other drawers. He looks behind, takes out the drawers. Maybe it fell behind the drawers. Looks behind the desk. Looks around the desk. Looks in other cabinets or closets in the office. Nothing. Turns over the entire house. Cannot find it. By the way, according to this story, there was a tremendous amount of money in that purse. 500 guldens. I don't know exactly what that equals in U.S. dollars, but 500 guldens at that time in Poland was a tremendous amount of money, could support a lot of people. And again, there was money that came in and out, but this was money that was being held for very specific needs. And now the money is gone, the purse is gone. So, Reb Herschel comes to the conclusion, only one conclusion. There's only one person that had access to his office. There's only one person that knew about the purse. And who is it? Anshel Moshe, his assistant. And Anshel Moshe had recently gotten married and packed up and busted out of Dodge. And he's thinking now, there's only one person that could have taken it. I didn't take it. It must have been Anshel Moshe. He must have needed the money for his wedding. He must have taken it. And that's it. Now he's gone. So he said, look, if it was my money, that's one thing. But it's tzedakah funds that's needed by needy people. I have to get it. I have to track it down. So he immediately sets out, I guess the next morning, because he looked at the B'dikas Chametz is at night. The next morning, or maybe not the next morning, maybe after the holiday, whatever. Shortly thereafter, he sets out to the other town that Anshel Moshe had moved to settle with his wife and his new life. And he goes over to him and he says, you know, I'm heartbroken to have to say this, and I'm so devastated. But I was looking for the chametz, and I noticed that the purse is missing, and this is tzedakah money, and it's a large amount, and there are people that need it that I have to distribute it to that are not going to have what they need. And he starts talking about the people that are in need, trying to really lay on, kind of, you know, impress the need to get that money back. He really, really, you know, presents a case not in an angry way, but a really like a heartbreaking way. Anshel Moshe, tears are streaming down his eyes, and without saying a word, he goes over to his own wallet, purse, whatever, collection, stash of money, and he collects all the money in his house, and he hands Reb Herschel, he hands him money, and he says, okay, he counts it up. This is 250 goldens. I will get the second half of the money. I will get the remainder. I'm going to work extra hours, and I'll get it back to you in the next few months. Reb Herschel says, thank you for returning what you took. You know, and he had told him, like, tshuva, you can always do tshuva, you can always repair what you've done, whatever. So he says, it's forgiven, forgotten, you know, as long as you make the reparations and you pay it back, everything will be good. Okay. So he was curious, Reb Herschel was curious, how come Anshel Moshe never, you know, he didn't express regret or remorse, he just paid it back, but he didn't say, I'm sorry, he didn't give an excuse, he didn't say anything to justify it, you know, he didn't express the need of why he took it, he just gave it back, gave back the first half, whatever, he thought it was curious. Anyway, and as the months rolled by, more money, the payback, the payoff was happening, and after several months, all the money was paid back. Well, a month or two later, after the entire money was paid back, after the entire 500 guldens had been repaid, the rabbi gets a knock at the door. He opens the door, and who is it? The chief of police. Chief of police says, I need you to come down to the station. He's very concerned, obviously. He says, why? Is everything okay? He says, yeah, everything's fine. Don't worry, you're not in trouble. The community is safe. Everything's okay, but I need you to come down. So he sits him down in the chair in the police station, and there's a woman sitting there, and he says, do you recognize this woman? He says, no, I actually don't recognize her. This woman, for months, this woman was your housekeeper in your own home. And she's been behaving suspiciously lately, and her neighbors turned her in, and we came to her house, and we've arrested her. Let me tell you what happened. Apparently, shortly before Passover, and she confessed to everything, and this is the story. Shortly before Passover, she was cleaning your house, and she opened up the drawer in your office, and she saw a purse of 500 guldens, and she took it, and she stole it. And because she was so wealthy, she stopped working for you. And because she was so wealthy, she started spending the money and making somewhat lavish purchases, or purchases that weren't up to her typical standard of living. Her neighbors noticed, and they also noticed that not only was she coming home with Corvettes and BMWs and Mercedes, I'm kidding, right? Not only was she coming home with, bigger purchases than normal, but she was digging under a tree or next to a tree in her yard. She was digging and undigging and digging, digging up and burying and digging and burying, and something was suspicious. Well, we were tipped. We went there, we dug it up, and we found a purse of money. We went to her, we arrested her, and she confessed everything. She stole your money, and here's the purse back with all of the money except for four of the guldens. I don't know what a gulden is, but whatever, 4 of those coins that she had spent, but the rest is here. The rabbi, of course, is grateful, but now the rabbi is completely flummoxed, completely confused, because he had gone to Anshel Moshe, told him what had happened, and Anshel Moshe had paid him back. So what's going on? So he immediately sets out to the town of Anshel Moshe, and he says to him, "What happened? When I went to you with the story about the missing purse, you paid me back. It turns out it was stolen by someone else. So why did you give me back the money?" He says, Rabbi, when you came to me, I saw the need, and I felt the need. And it didn't matter if I took the money or not. There were tears streaming down my face because you presented the need, and I knew the need. I worked with you. And so how could I not help you get that money that you needed? I didn't say a word because it wasn't relevant if I took it or not. I was going to get back the money that you needed to help the people that needed the money for tzedakah, from the tzedakah fund. The rabbi was just completely blown away by the kindness, the generosity, the sincerity, the earnestness, the love, the compassion that this man, Anshel Moshe, had shown. And he told him, I want to give you a bracha. I want to give you a blessing. And he was a rabbi who used to give blessings that had a lot of success. He said, I want to give you a blessing. You should go, leave this small town, go to the big town, go to Frankfurt, Germany. And there in Frankfurt, he paid him back the money. He said, I got back the money, so let me give back the 500 guldens that you had given. So he gives him back the money. He says, take this money, go to Frankfurt, Germany, and there I want you to open up a business, an even bigger business than you have now from your father-in-law, and you should be successful, and Hashem should bless you with the opportunity to give, and be very successful. And so it was. He took the money, he went to Frankfurt, and he became a very successful businessman. And his son was even more successful. And his grandsons even more successful. Because Anshel Moshe's last name was Rothschild. And now you know the rest of the story. The father of the Rothschilds, the great Rothschild family, barons, right? Leaders, philanthropists across Europe, financiers. Where did it come from? The story begins with one act of kindness. Not saying a word, not justifying himself, not pleading innocent, not saying you got the wrong guy, not saying it wasn't me, not saying, Rabbi, how dare you accuse me? But just feeling the need, being overwhelmed by the situation, the calling, or not overwhelmed like to the point of paralysis, but fully taking it in and responding by giving. And that opened the doors for generations of blessings. And so, as we get ready for another round of the holiday, which begins tonight, we have the 7th day of Pesach that starts tonight, Shvi Shel Pesach, which is the anniversary of the splitting of the sea, which happened 7 days after the Exodus, when the Jews were at the sea and trapped between the sea and the Egyptians, and God split the sea. As we celebrate the 7th day of Pesach and the 8th day, known as Acharon Shel Pesach, a day in which we think about not just the redemption of the past, but like in our story with Shmerel the Shikker or Shmerel the Tailor, we think about God taking us out with Mashiach from the current exile and the future redemption. So may this truly be a holiday of riches. May we be generous and give to those in need, and may God bless us with all of the blessings that we and our families need, not only for us, but for our children and our grandchildren and for generations to come. And I'll also mention that at the splitting of the sea, the Jews became very wealthy, because as the Egyptians washed up on shore, their wealth also washed up on shore. And so they cleaned out to the point that Moshe had to tell them, all right, guys, enough, let's go, let's move on from the sea. So may God bless us as we enter this holiday tonight and tomorrow and the next night. And so basically Tuesday night to Thursday night, may God bless us with revealed blessings. May all of the seas in our lives, all of the things that cover over, the concealments in our lives, may they all split and open up. May we have revealed blessings, not hidden blessings. And may we have riches, both spiritually as well as materially. Thank you for joining me today for Tales to Inspire. And I look forward to seeing you back on Friday for the Daily Power Partial. We'll be back at noon, regularly scheduled programming. Thank you for joining me today.